Okay, here we go. Let's see here, make sure the mic is working. Good morning. Good morning, traders. All right, things look good. So we're recording. All right, so here we are on MNQ, NASDAQ Micro Futures, Tuesday, May 5th. So what do we got today? Today is Tuesday of NFP week, and that's really important. NFP week is a capital preservation week. And you can see with my notes on the chart here today, A++ today. I'm going to accept nothing less when it comes to a setup. So I think based off what we saw yesterday, so yesterday's price action was horrid. There was, scrolling back here real quick to the open New York opening. So here we go. Yesterday we saw, here's the opening line, this blue line right here. And there was nothing but chop. Just brutal chop, ugly seek and destroy for a sell-off at 1050, and then more chop. Even the reversal that presented at 12 o'clock didn't really, it took, like, look at all this chop. If you took this inversion, you just got beat up before it eventually hit any targets. So I am expecting a little better price action. Usually Monday of NFP week is the cleaner day, and Tuesday is the least clean. But given what I saw yesterday, I'm actually kind of, these things tend to flip-flop, like, tends to be if one day's poor, the next day's better. If one session's poor, the next session's better. Like if the AM is not clean, the PM tends to be cleaner. So I'm expecting some better price action today. You can see my notes here. Overall, we have bullish order flow, but we have 4-hour ERL has been taken, external range liquidity, which means if we look here, we're on the 1 hour. We can see the price came back down to this imbalance, this fair value gap, and took internal range liquidity, which means it's then going to seek external range liquidity, right? We're making lower lows, higher highs. We just made a higher high. So that means I can realistically expect at some point price to come retrace back down in here somewhere for a discount long. Now, the thing is, what we don't know is how long does it keep pushing up before turning back for that internal range? Like here in this example, so this candle right here took external range, and then the whole next hour or two kind of floated above before it retraced back down for any longs later on. So that's the question. Kind of scooting around real quick. We have 1 minute till open. On the 15-minute time frame, we have lots of targets below. I'm not going to short this. That's not how I play. I don't short all-time highs and continued bullish order flow. So I'm looking for a long to come back down into these equal lows, the new week opening gap, midnight open. We have lots of targets somewhere down in there. So we got 1 minute until open here. And yeah, so what I have my notes up here is I'm wanting to see it sell off for longs, and I'm not expecting a setup right at the 930 macro. But who knows? It could just tank. Looks like we have some equal lows right here, previous day high. And then we have this 4-hour 6 a.m. candle low. So we typically want to buy below the opening price of a candlestick. And when we're trading the New York AM session, we're looking at the 6 a.m. 4-hour candlestick. So it's just a note there. We have a previous week's high, we have a weekly open, then we have the new week opening gap, and then these equal lows right there. So, I'd like to see 930 sell off down into this zone for some kind of long. All right, we got the open. Doesn't mean it'll do it. It's just what I need to see. I know that A++ is going to be annoying today. All right, so far the opening is trading up, sweeping these relative equal highs right here, which makes sense if it wants to sell off. But who knows? It could be a one-stage delivery, and I didn't get to show you that. So what we can see here, I know this chart's a little messy, so please forgive me. This purple box here is the London session, and we can see Asia's pink here. What we want to see is we want to see London typically create a protraction, a manipulation. And in this case here, there is no manipulation. It's just a floating one-stage delivery for Asia and London session just straight up. And that typically isn't the case. Usually London manipulates, and if London does not manipulate, then New York does. And then in a rare instance, neither manipulate and they just float up like this. So we shall see. I'm not going to lie, this price action last week and change, I'm not one to sit here and say price action's poor. I know that's some, I don't know, some people online just, that tends to be they're the squeaky wheel saying price action sucks, price action sucks. And I don't know, I've not traded long enough. I've only been trading futures consistently live for a year and a half now. And they say, yeah, 2, 3, 4 years ago, so clean. I don't know. But what I'm getting at is the last week and change hasn't been great. This is now 5, 6. I have 6 days of no trades for me. Last week, there was not a single A++ setup. And I'm requiring A++ currently because last week was FOMC. This week is NFP. And those are the 2 weeks where I require it to be perfect. Because if it's not, it's just a gamble these 2 weeks. Like last week, there was a few A- trades. And for the few A- trades, there was probably 10 A- losses. And so the markets during these 2 weeks, your edge decreases. And the only way I've found to not turn NFP and FOMC weeks into blow your account weeks or tilt weeks is to really manage your expectations. So I expect to take potentially no trades these weeks, which really sucks. But at this point, it's pushing 6 days of no trades. Then I'm expecting something to happen. All right, we can see YM is selling off a little bit, so the markets are decoupled. ES is in the middle. NQ still has some strength to it. We can see 9:30 opening price. We have a huge regular trading hour gap. This gap right here is almost 200 handles. So it's borderline excessively large, which when this gap, this regular trading hours gap is this big, we can kind of actually tend to expect a little more one-stage delivery, which means price might just continue floating up. So, like a 2-stage delivery is going to be something we're going to have a manipulation, an entry, and then like a long, right? Down in here. 1-stage delivery is just where price kind of just does this. Doesn't really give you anything to get into, which has been more or less this whole thing. Like there was potentially a setup at 720, potentially. All right, we got a first presented for value gap right there. So these equal lows down here were taken at some point. I didn't see it. We do have 10 a.m. news coming up. So the aim here is just to be patient. One thing I'm doing this week is I'm actually doing a pre-market journal writing session, really keeping in mind the need to detach from my P&L. And that's both. I mean, I'm journaling exactly what I told you earlier about my expectations for the week, that I'm expecting so very little from this week, and that's important. Because if you go into a session and you have the expectation of taking a trade, you're going to likely force it. And if you force it, you're more likely to lose. And our edge is in waiting for our model to appear with clarity. Gosh, there's a lot I could say about that. But ultimately, I wrote about what I expect for this session. Like I can expect weird delivery. I can expect deep retracements. I can expect poor price action. I can expect no trades. But on top of that, writing about my P&L, I used to run Facebook ads for my business and spent a whole lot of money in Facebook ads over the years. And I could spend like $5,000 on an ad and it wouldn't do anything. That was part of the game because I would spend on other ads, and they would return 100-fold. And so in the end, I'd have these, these ad campaigns where $2,000 here, $3,000 here, $4,000 here didn't do anything. And this one ad campaign could return 50, 60,000. And I've always, kept that in mind, that the losses are an expense, that, you can't get to a payout. You can't pass an eval whatever it is, without taking some losses. And I think that's something that isn't talked about enough in the trading world, is normalizing being wrong and making I don't say making mistakes, but normalizing taking losing trades. Normalizing having your bias off for some days, because all of this is in our edge. Our edge includes being wrong in the session bias X percentage of the days. Our edge includes the model failing X number of times. And trading is just a game of being able to be wrong sometimes and being okay with it. And it really is exemplified in trading. Like, I did never experience this running my own businesses. You're wrong sometimes, but it doesn't do anything the same. Like, even back then with those Facebook ads, it didn't trigger me the same as maybe being wrong and trading did. So we're still waiting here. Got 937. The markets are just decoupled, kind of suggesting we have some manipulation here. YM coming down. YM is doing what I wanted to see NQ doing. But we'll be patient and we'll see. And to some extent, I want to say making mistakes is normal too. But I want to be clear about something with that. It's not like it's okay, you can just make mistakes and, not take your model or take B grade setups or any of those kind of things. What I've found with trading is there's so much to it, so many little intricacies that, like, when I've tried to grade myself on an did I perform? What was my performance level today? What percentage did I achieve? What grade did I achieve from my day? It's been really hard to say A+ for the day, because there's all these little tiny intricacies that come up when you're like taking a model and, your variations are like price action. And you're like, well, I don't know. I kind of flubbed up this and kind of messed up that. And there's all these little tiny things, almost like, in a kickboxing fight, let's say, you're not going to play every round perfect. You're going to make some mistakes, and in the end, how did you perform? Did you win the fight or did you lose the fight? And so we have to accept some of these like minor mistakes, especially when we're scalpers on a lower time frame. And we have to accept the uncertainty, and we have to accept losses. We have to accept that we're wrong sometimes. And what's really interesting about that to me is the parallels to life. It's a skill that I think modern humans are so terrible at, unfortunately, is admitting they're wrong. And we often see this reflected to us in relationships with our loved ones. And especially for people that, are maybe hypersensitive or have ego issues, like, it's hard to admit you're wrong. And yet, ironically, it's the thing that can make things better. If you're just okay with being wrong in trading, then you won't get triggered and go off on a tilt spree. But if in your relationship with your wife or your husband, if you make a mistake and you argue that you're right, like, they're just going to be pissed at you. And then you're going to have a scar on the relationship. And if that happens again and again, it can really damage a relationship, And whereas if a person was to just admit they're wrong, like, hey, yeah, it sucked, I did that, I'm sorry, and move on, like, then that builds trust. It builds, connection, closeness. And so the parallels are just clear as day to me between trading and life when it comes to being able to just be cool with being wrong and admit you're wrong and move on. All right, 940, still just floating upwards. Not really going to sit here and tape read much, because there's just nothing to tape read. Like, yeah, I got a volume imbalance, a fair value gap, volume imbalance, volume imbalance, volume imbalance. Another fair value gap, price is just floating up. YM is doing the, excuse me. All right, there we go. YM is doing the manipulation that I wanted NQ to do, and that's frustrating. I'm not going to lie. To have 6 days of no trades, and then to see YM do what MNQ does, what I want to see MNQ do, Haven't woken up yet, apparently. It's a bummer. But, you know, I'm not going to chase it. If YM makes the model and does the manipulation for the long, okay, I guess that's it. But we do also have 10 a.m. news coming up, so I'm curious to see what that does. One interesting thing I'll tell you, I just took a drink of my iced latte. The only account I've ever blown ever, so I have 8 of my 9 original funded accounts from the last year and a half. The only account I ever blew, and the day I blew it, it was perfectly good account, like break even, fresh. I blew it because of coffee. So the story goes that it was last November, I guess. I was feeling really tired in the afternoons, like unbearably tired. Like 2 o'clock rolls around and I'm just like, half the week I need to take a nap, it felt like. And then I would slug through to bedtime. And I was realizing like that's, something's wrong. I'm super healthy. I'm active. I'm fit. I'm eat whole, high quality whole foods, balanced diet, balance my macros. Don't drink, don't smoke, like all the things, tons of water, no sugar, very little sugar, no sweets, gone to the, been to the doctor, done sleep studies, like super, just didn't make any sense why I was so tired. And I was like, okay, well, I guess the last thing I can even think of to try is to pull out coffee. Now, to be honest, I was a coffee junkie. I asked ChatGPT about it and it equated me to what did it say? It was like a mild methamphetamine addict kind of thing. And I was like, okay, because I drink like 3 supercharged double shot espressos per day. I have this espresso machine and it makes such strong espresso that like I go to Starbucks, or we don't have Starbucks here. I live in the middle of nowhere, but you go to like a coffee shop and it tastes like piss water to me. The coffee, the lattes, the espresso. And so I quit coffee. And I planned to do it. I stopped on a Thursday. On Thursday I had a coffee. On Friday I had a partial coffee, just enough to get me through the morning. I traded. And then I figured I'd go through the withdrawals over the weekend, right? And I'd be good on Monday to trade. Well, I went through the withdrawals over the weekend. Had terrible migraines and everything over the weekend. Monday rolls around. I think I'm okay, because I'm over the migraines and stuff like that. And I sit down and I trade. And I took a loss. And again, it was like $100 loss on a 50K account that was pretty much like, I think I had pretty much 50K in it. And I didn't get mad. I didn't get full of rage. I just started tilting, like click, 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 click. Didn't even wait for a setup. And I toasted the account in like 8 minutes or something. I stood up out of my desk and I walked away. And I was like, what was that? I've never done that. I consider myself one of the more disciplined traders out there. If not, I don't want to say, I don't like hyperboles, but I look at a lot of the influencers and I'm like, I have so much more discipline than you. And I walked away, and the next day it occurred to me, like I was super moody, super depressed. Well, it turns out when you quit coffee, especially after that much, you spend the next like month in this like, there's a term for it, I forget what it was, but essentially a depressed state. And I was so depressed and blue. And anyways, so yeah, the one account I blew was because of substance withdrawals, So you may be wondering, why am I drinking coffee? Well, I went however long that was, November till maybe last month. And I just was so down and depressed. Even months later, I didn't feel exceptional. I felt better. I didn't feel like this, renewed like sense of energy that just kept me going for hours and hours and hours. I didn't feel that. I felt a slow and gradual increase in my energy levels. And to the point where it just felt normal. Like, I could normally get through the day. And that was fine. So that was awesome. That was exactly what I wanted, right? Quitting coffee did help. This is a really long story, I know, but what else are we going to do here? And so I got my energy back. It didn't, like I said, it didn't bounce back, and I didn't feel like a superhero like some people claim. But I definitely felt way better. And I went on so I live on the edge of the national forest, and all kinds of dirt roads heading into the backwoods. And I think last month I went and took a dirt road in the backwoods, and I stopped in town on the way out into the forest. And I don't know, I just filled up at the gas station, put some diesel in the truck, and I was like, man, there's a coffee shop, Mama Bear's, sitting right there next to that. We live in a small town of like 800 people outside of it. I went to Mama Bear's and I got that. I don't know, I just got a coffee. I'm like, I'm going to try it and see what happens. Just data, right? And my mood flipped like so. I couldn't drink it. I flat out couldn't drink it. It took me like 3 days to drink that latte, the iced latte. But even just with like a few sips, my mood changed so much. I was so happy and just felt so good. And just like, you know, I worked so hard at so many things, and there's so little dopamine in my life and reward. I just work. And, you know, a family, and I'm a dad and a family man, and I'm trying to stay fit and take care of our property and build multiple businesses and day trade. And it's been tough. And so I had that sip of coffee and I'm like, oh God, this is the one thing, right? And so anyways, I decided, okay, well, let's test this. I know now what coffee can do to me if it's too much. And so I got some decaf, some Swiss waterpress decaf, which is a method of decaffeinating coffee that doesn't remove the flavor in the oil and doesn't inject it with like chemicals and stuff. And I split it with my normal espresso roast. And so I just drink these like partial caps, and I don't drink nearly as many of them. And it's cool. It's like, apparently moderation's fine. I can drink some really good coffee in moderation. So for what it's worth, that was a 10-minute long coffee story for anyone who watches this and thinks about those kind of things. All right, so where are we at? We're at 948, and price is still just floating up. So one stage delivery for 930 pretty much, as far as I would consider. You know, there was just kind of prices just going up. There's no meaningful manipulation. I mean, there is a manipulation slightly. I'm sure someone took this as a stop hunt and a breaker or an order block or something and longed it. But not for me. This is a manipulation. You know, look how YM is coming down, sweeping this low, and now it's prepping to go up. I'm curious to see what happens with this 10 a.m. news. This is, we got ISM and JOLTS coming up, and it's typically not a big mover. But maybe it will be today, just given what I'm seeing here. Oh, by the way, if you're watching this, I always forget to say this, but, you know, I'd appreciate any likes or subscribes if you're still here. You know, I'm a small channel. Really does help. Every single like and every single subscribe really does help. Mostly just me, because I feel like, you know, cool, this is helping someone. And I, you know, if you look at your metrics, your views and likes and subscribers to see, is this helping someone? Should I keep doing this stuff, you know? So one thing to keep in mind here, just looking over at this chart, you know, on the 15-minute, here's the previous all-time high on NQ. All-time highs just be good all-time highs. And this is exactly why I don't even try to short this crap. You know, looking at the chart here, this isn't too bad today, but, you know, here's an inversion. Where'd it go? Right here. Some people might have taken that because there was SMT, I think, or currently is double SMT. I don't know, sometimes you'll get multiple inversions in a run like this and it just continues to stomp on you. So what we can see so far is it didn't do what I was wanting to see it do. So therefore there was no trade for me, right? I wanted to see the open sell-off for longs. And instead the open just floated up with one stage delivery and nothing to do. And so my mind disengaged, like I'm not looking for shorts. And I'm also not looking for longs in here because I know if it doesn't do some kind of meaningful manipulation, I don't have anything to do. And now it might come later, and that's what I'm waiting for, is to kind of see some kind of, and like it can change like a little bit later. you know, price doesn't need to come back down here because that changes the picture. Right now, the picture's changing a little bit. You know, there's a large 15-minute fair value gap forming right here. So what does price do? Does price start doing some consolidation, giving me some really nice trend line liquidity and some equal lows, and then does some kind of like big manipulation for a long where it sweeps these equal lows here and targets these equal highs, like, and never comes back down into this zone? Like, that's more what I'm looking for at this point. So, you know, you got to be both knowing what you want to see and flexible to adapt to what happens. And like in the case of this open, let's see see if there's anything on the 5-minute I can show you. Not really. So like this open, so I really wanted to see price come back down into here, right? This weekly open, close some of this opening range gap. But what we can see is actually instead we left these pretty sweet relative equal lows. And instead, if price would have come back down into this 5-minute gap, right, pretty aggressively, here's the open, where is it? Oh, that's my blue line, I see. Sorry, just really confused myself. Why is there 2 blue dotted lines? So if the open would have instead had traded down into this gap, or made some equal lows like this, consolidated, traded down into this gap, and then created an inversion, had some SMT, then maybe I would have considered in certain market conditions rewriting my expectations that it's not coming all the way down in here. For NFP week, I probably would want to see it take some more major liquidity, like a 1-hour level as opposed to a 15-minute or 5-minute in this zone. And then in that case, like for this week, I am totally okay with missing the move. I don't even have a model down in here. Let's see. Kinda, like that's 926. So here's a stop hunt. Here's a stop hunt. And then it closed above all this garbage, right? It's not even a breaker. There's no inversion, no breaker. It's just kind of like an order block. Maybe the 2 minutes got something, I don't know. 3-minute, not really. 5-minute, not really. Just a tiny consolidation phase. No model, no play. And I know it's not the sexy stuff. I know it's not the fun stuff to watch, but it's what this is the real stuff, you know? And it can get really boring trading, which is in part why I just sit here and talk. All right, we got 5 minutes left on this 15-minute candle. It's just kind of consolidating. We got a gap down in here. So this gap here currently forming. I paint them red when they're kind of, for me, like I don't paint gaps green and red to be like bullish bearish for SIBIs and BISIs. SIBI is sell side imbalance. BISI is buy side imbalance, which means just a gap on the sell side of the curve or a gap on the buy side of the curve. I do them all blue, but I paint them red, or I color them red when they're still forming. And just to keep it in mind for me, like just remembering there's a huge imbalance. This single candlestick, it might want to come back down and balance all of this out, right? Down to these wicks up in here. Or it could consolidate here, and then the next candle wants to come back down, partially fill the gap, and continue. So just keeping that in mind. But we're maintaining above the new week opening gap. So we still have all these targets to sell side. We have, which it might just leave them today. It's getting really far away from them. So a couple things. We have the new week opening gap right here. And look how many times this week it's flipped it. So here was Sunday open. Monday morning, closed below on the 15. Closed above, closed below. And now we're closing above. So this is, you know, typical pre-NFP or pre-FOMC kind of behavior. Just a lot of consolidation Monday, Tuesday. But the one thing we can see is there's all these targets below. Midnight open, the opening range gap, new day opening gap. price this morning was already up to the 1/3 ADR. So 1/3 of the average daily range by open. And I think I said this earlier on in the stream. When we do that, when London does a one-stage delivery and when price hits the 1/3 ADR, there's the likelihood at that point for price just to continue doing this the whole day. And so now that's a little bit more on my radar, seeing how we responded at open. Open did not just sell off. So I'm kind of no longer expecting any of these targets down in here in this discount. Instead, I'm expecting maybe some kind of small lower time frame retracement into this 15-minute gap, and for price to then just kind of continue onwards and upwards. So we shall see. These all-time highs, you just long them until you can't. So really, I'm just going to clean this up a little bit. Asia low, no longer a target. New day opening gap, not really a target. London low, not possible. I didn't think it was coming down to London low. I wanted to see it come down into the 50% of London, which was basically this relative equal high, low, this gap, midnight open, like all of that. So, but we ain't coming down there, I don't think. All right, we got 9:58 New York time, 2 minutes. Excuse me. 2 minutes until the red folder. Curious to see what it does. And we got this little bit of consolidation happening right here. Pretty typical pre-red folder. YM, you know, inverse this gap right here. And ES is just the middle asset, which it typically is. Typically, it's between the two. YM and Q are have the strength, and they switch it. And then ES is typically in the middle, which is why people don't trade ES. I joke a little bit about that. I'm sure that some people love ES. All right, 1 minute, 30 seconds actually, till in the red folder. Let's see what happens, 15 seconds. You know, I'm not seeing anything here that's like super awesome. In terms of like really beautiful equal lows or anything like that. Yeah, you're on the 1 minute. We do have the 15-minute gap below, so that's confirmed. Not likely going to have anything in the next couple minutes. So look at YM down in here, you know, closed above, and it's rallying. So that means we got a new 1 hour candle. So now I'm keeping an eye out for this fair value gap to form. I'm going to paint it red. We have this 15-minute gap has been confirmed. We also have this fair value gap right away down in here. This is a fair value gap in a swing, and that makes it a key fair value gap. I should use a different color maybe, but just to make it stand out a little bit more. I don't know. Doesn't matter. Point being, this is a fair value gap formed in a swing point. And those are more high probability than just your regular fair value gap. So here's this inversion, this 1 hour inversion, internal inversion. And then we got just these gaps breaking, unbalanced gaps down here. All right, so let's go back to the 15-minute. We got to tap into this gap. Let's go back to the 1 minute. Nothing really. So that red folder didn't do anything. What can sometimes happen, we shall see, is sometimes a candle or two later, it'll just sink or rally. We do have an inversion right here. But for me, there's just not enough to sink my teeth into. There is a 5-minute gap down in here. Price traded into right down in here, this 5-minute fair value gap. There's an SMT. And maybe, if, like for me, there's just not enough liquidity built up. There's not enough reason for price to sweep this high. So there's no long. Because I'm expecting A++ today. And even truly, like, is a 15-minute gap A++? I don't know. And that's what I was speaking to earlier, where like in trading, there's so many intricacies. Like that question just came up. I've been doing this for a while now, and like, oh, I was like, oh, is a 15-minute gap A++? And I'm like, well, on a normal day it is, but today's FOM or this week is NFP, so maybe it's not. And that was kind of what I was saying, but like you make mistakes, you know. And then in hindsight, you're like, oh, I took the trade. I thought it was A++. I guess it wasn't. So, I don't know, I'm feeling a little like, let's just wander around. We'll do this. I think I got, oh, let's look for this. I'm just curious. I'm checking to see if other people are even trading this. I feel like I'm just clicking around real quick and not too many people other than Nutty Bar are even taking positions. Yeah, nothing. Let's keep looking. Let's see. Looked at Benjamin SMC, Lumi Traders. Let's look for Tanya. I looked at Nutty Bar. He doesn't trade anywhere near the way I do, but he's always trading. He's up somehow today. Well, this is the kind of day that Nutty Bar probably lives for. these one-sided deliveries. Well, maybe I should have taken you on the adventure with me, but I was just clicking around real quick on YouTube. So let's see here. This is what I want to show you. Here's my P&L calendar. April, we can see the 5th week, and this is FOMC last week, no trades. And we can see May, we're here on the 5th, it's highlighted, no trades. And this is something I don't think it gets enough attention in the trading world, is, and it's made such a big difference for me, is just the capital preservation. Like, it's like, oh, we got to trade every week. We got to trade every week. We got to be green every week. And it's really hard not to trade, especially for us scalpers. But you'll see, and this is rare. I don't I've skipped a week, right, here or there. I think once or twice I've skipped 2 weeks of price action. This is pretty rare. It's getting to be pretty rare. But we're also at all-time highs again and again, overextended all-time highs, unique all-time highs. This has been the quickest rally to all-time highs in the history of the markets. And, you know, the Iran conflict. So we shall see how this plays out. But this is a part that I don't think gets enough attention in the trading world. And I get it, like, it's not sexy. It's not Lambos in the new strategy that's this instant fix. No one frickin' wants to hear that you have to sit on your hands for days on end. Like, oh man, this is not easy stuff. This is hard stuff to just sit around. But you'll notice my accounts are not red. A flat week is way better than a red week, because that's much easier to come back from, right? I could have a flat week this week and a flat week this week, and I can get a good week and a break-even week, and I'm still up nicely on the month, you know? So what do we got here? Price is just stalling out. We have no movement since that red folder. I gave it about 5 minutes. So what this tells me here, and my experience is, and I was expecting better price action than this today. What this tells me is 2 things. I'm not interested in price, because what it might do is it might make a run and then just kind of stall out for a while. We're not seeing distribution today. It probably comes later, and I'm not interested in later. I do cut off my trading time at 11:10 a.m. I found my statistics show that after that point in time, I'm unprofitable. And so I adhere to that rule and I don't break it. And even on a day like today, that's NFP, or excuse me, a week like this, which is NFP, it's lower probability. And I know it's lower probability for me if I push into 11:10. And I know when price is moving like this, it's just lower probability. So everything is compounding against the premise of an A++ trade today. So with that said, I think I've talked your ear off enough today. I'm just going to end it there. I'm good with no trades. I'm good with preserving capital. I'm just kind of in that mode already. And I don't think I'm going to see anything A+. So I'll probably stream tomorrow. Let me look at, see what I'm going to do. Let's see here. So yeah, I'll trade Wednesday and Thursday mornings. So what's today, Tuesday? Yeah. So yeah, now I was going to say something, but I think it's going to start selling off now. But yeah, another 15-minute candle is going to close as a compression candle.